what allows us to really do the job, I think, very ethically, is we don't have an obligation to send to an Acadia facility. So we use facilities outside of the network that Acadia does not own. They do not make one singular cent on it. And if that's the best fit for the client, for insurance, clinical, financials, geography, et cetera, we have no problem.
This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
Yeah, it was so.
Finally get there, and the rug's pulled out from under you.
Yeah, I mean, so what happened with that was it was a blessing in disguise. I mean, it was not the way I had envisioned going out. Truth be told, and this is full transparency, I have nothing to hide. The city was in financial dire straits, so to speak. And there was a lot of reasons why that was. I mean, the casino industry, the downturn of the economy, competition in the casino industry. They had a bunch of tax appeals. I don't know if you guys know the history of this. And that crushed the city's coffers. So the state came in, state of New Jersey, and sort of, they took over. The government, and they were making all kinds of changes. They were basically trying to turn us into a metro police department, and they did succeed in some respects. And what they wanted to do was, I can say this stuff candidly now. I don't work there. They were, part of it was, a big part of it was financial motivation, right, to clean up some of the books, which I get that. But we didn't like the way they went about it because they forced out a lot of good people at the end. And it was a situation where you had to retire. I mean, they they did things, cutting our salaries and our benefits and stuff, ripping up our contracts that they knew were not right to do to people. Long story short, we appealed it and won it. So it's water under the bridge, but it was not a good experience to go through. And they were basically able to turn over the books. They pushed out, there were 13 of us left in my class, my original class of, 30 something, 13 of us, and all 13 of us retired on, the 25th day or the 25th year, the last day of the 25th year. So, or the day that we could, November 1st, essentially. And a lot of, that was higher salaries that went out. I get that, but the way they did it was not good.
But you're losing a lot of administration at that point, too.
Oh yeah. There was a lot of experience.
Yeah.
A lot of administration. And, so, I will tell you this. I did plan for my exit in that I pursued higher education. I was lucky enough to be chosen and accepted and went to the FBI National Academy. So I had a pretty large network of people. And, not just in the law enforcement, but in the business world from being around and being an Atlantic City resident and having, knowing people. So I was planning and I looked around and I leaned on my mentor, Will Glass, and a couple other people to really sort of make a plan where what do I need to do to succeed on the other side? And, I started doing, I was teaching.
You're a young man.
Yeah, 46 years old. So I was teaching. I had written articles for, some pretty big, publications and got my name out there. And it's about networking, truthfully. So at that time, before I retired, I am, this is not a brag. I'm just, saying I did have several opportunities. They didn't fall in my lap. I worked for them. I put myself in a position to get them. I had several opportunities, and this one by far was the most appealing. What I'm doing now, working for Acadia Healthcare.
But see, the NA is a big networking thing anyway. You were cops from all across the country, all around the world, right?
Oh yeah, that's where I just came from. I was in Nashville at the Tennessee, Kentucky FBI and AA chapter training, which they have a combined chapter, and I got invited to speak there and be a sponsor, and so we get to do cool things like that. And I saw two of my classmates. This is 2014. Yeah. Saw two guys I hadn't seen in years. And it's like you pick up right where you left off. So that was a pretty cool thing too.
But it's funny, you had this amazing career. And by the way, I do want to say, before I go any further, the amount of people, you talk about networking, the amount of people that you know and who know you is astonishing. I speak about my therapist, and I go in there and I'm sitting in there and you call me as I'm sitting in session. My phone goes off and I look down and she goes, "Who's that?" And she sees it and she goes, "Oh, I know him. He gave me the fern." I'm like, "What? What the hell is this? Like, what's going on?" And Amanda Coleman,
of course.
In the Irish, I'm not even going to try to butcher the Irish brogue, but I love Billy.
Yeah.
I love Billy. It's amazing how many people you know. And I always say that if you're a police officer for 25 years and you don't connect with a group of people outside of the police department, you're really wasting your career, because one day this job ends and now you're looking for something else to do. But I will say this about you. Through your networking, what you did in the police department is important, but what you're doing now, this is your calling.
Your
brother.
niche.
Oh yeah.
This is what I know personally. We get people reaching out to us. I'm going to give full disclosure to our audience. We get people reaching out to us who just pretty much want to talk, but they're in some bad ways. Mm-hmm. And now through knowing you, and Amanda's another great resource, I have a resource where you might not be able to help them, but it could be a starting point. Because before, it's just like you and me talking, hey, it's not that bad. It's going to get better. The sun's going to rise tomorrow. It's a little different.
I mean, part of that is I have a big family, and I have people in public service. They know the name, right? It's kind of a well-known name around. But, I also, again, from my father and from Will Glass and a couple others, I learned the power of networking the right way. I never sought out to be a popular guy or to have everybody like me. You're not going to accomplish that. I think that's the wrong intention there. Networking, and this was explained to me, and I'll pass this on because it's worked very well for me, and I didn't invent it, so I'm happy to share this. Networking is about when you shake hands with somebody and you look them in the eyes and you say, hey, call me if you never ever need anything. I'm not making small talk. I mean it, right?
That's you hit the nail on the head. It's not how you doing, and if you tell me, that's freaking rude. It's I want to know how you're doing.
Absolutely.
If you need me, call me.
Yeah. And I will say those words. I'm not making small talk. Reach out. And I've told this to the guys who I've mentored, especially in the police department. The greatest networking opportunity I ever had was going to the NA. I mean, you're talking about international outreach at this point, right? And these relationships last forever in a lot of cases. But here's the other thing. When someone calls you, and I think I grew up with this, be a man of your word. When someone calls you, you better answer the phone on the first or second ring if possible. And if you can't, it better be for a good reason.
Especially if you say, if you need anything, give me a call.
Right. I mean,
And now they're calling you and you don't answer.
exactly. So when they call, answer the phone and do everything in your power to immediately drop what you're doing, unless there's an emergency there, and tell them that, and do the best you can to assist them. And that's worked for me very well. And I'm going to tell you why. Because you quickly become the go-to guy for a lot of folks. And you also become somebody that people can trust, that you're going to do the right thing and you're going to do what you say, right? So I was taught that, and I held on to that tightly. And I still hold on to it tightly today. And I try to do the best I can to instill this in my children too. And I think I have. So it's not just about shaking hands. Hey, how you doing? Give your business cards out. That's not networking, man. It's shaking people's hands, really getting to know them, being there for folks, dropping everything that you're doing to help someone, not because you might need a favor one day, but I can tell you this: I've had to use some favors here and there, and I got stuff done really quick. And it wasn't even for me; it was a favor for someone else, and
Did you ever get stuffed, though? I mean, you give, and sometimes people don't reciprocate. I ran into this, and it was actually somebody from group. He was one of these guys, hey, call me if you ever need me. He called, I'm that guy. He called me. I'm good at construction. So he needed something installed. I go down to his house, which was like an hour and 15 minutes away. I go down there, I put in a door, and we had a couple new guys coming into our group therapy session, and I wanted the older guys there for some experience. So I called everybody up, and I said, hey, listen, could you do me a favor? Just come to group. We got new guys coming in. I need the experience. I want the experience there to show that you can get through this stuff. You can beat it. Nothing. And I got a little mad. I'm going to be honest with you. I got a little mad. I didn't lash out. It got back to him that I might have said something to the doctor, and it got back to him. He calls me up. He says, I hear you're a little mad at me. I was like, yeah, well, all I'd ask you to do is just show up, just be there for somebody else to repay what you were given. And his thing was, ask me anything else. Ask me any other favor. And I said, I don't ask a second favor when the first is denied. I learned that from The Godfather, so I didn't make that one up. I don't ask a second favor when the first one's denied. You're just off my radar. You're not a guy I can trust who does what they say they're going to do. So have you ever been stuff like that?
There's none that really stand out. I'm sure there's been a couple.
And that's not if they're not capable of doing it. If they're not capable, like, you help somebody out, hey, can I borrow $10,000? It's not like that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, there's been many disappointments along the way. So the answer to that very precisely is yes, that's happened, but it doesn't deter me. I mean, again, your personal code of honor. What is it? So the other side of that has served me well. So I continue to try to do that the best I can is be dependable to people. And now with this job, I mean, you have no choice. I mean, you have to be dependable.
Tell everybody what you do at Acadia.
So I'm part of a team of about 80 folks that are spread across every geographical region of the United States, called the Treatment Placement Specialist Team. It
is the marquee mental health entity in the United States from my research that I've seen.
I would agree with that. Well, look,
I'm not being biased, but I'll agree.
Well, here's what I will say. Acadia is the largest behavioral health care company in the U.S. At one time, when I first came on, they were the largest behavioral health care company provider in the world at that time. And there was like 44,000 employees when I got hired in 2017. I mean, they treat 75,000 plus people a day in their network. So, I mean, it's gigantic. They owned, I want to say 590 facilities internationally in the U.S., the U.K., and Puerto Rico. But they have since reorganized some of the assets and sold off many, if not all, of the stuff in the U.K. so to refocus on what they're doing in the U.S. But they're gigantic. Their outreach is, I mean, it's just nobody can compete with the outreach because of what they can do. But so I work for the operations team of Acadia. Sorry if this is a long explanation, but I want the viewers to understand, or the the listeners and viewers.
Take your time.
So I work for the operations division. So even though they own about 300 facilities, including psychiatric hospitals, residential treatment centers. I mean, they even have methadone clinics, they detox, et cetera. I don't work for any of the facilities. We're sort of like an offshoot of the parent company in that we're like the operations division of a department. We were formed. And they, by the way, they came up with the name Treatment Placement Specialist. And if you look at it, it's a little trademark after they trademarked the name and the actual definition of the role. And essentially what it is a in-kind service, a free of charge service that helps anyone navigate the behavioral health care landscape. So anybody could pick up the phone, go on the map, go on the website, and look somebody up who's in your region, call them and say, this is a problem I have. This is an issue that I'm dealing with. I'm looking for, entry level, a trauma therapist, a grief counselor. Check. We do that all day long. I'm looking for, outpatient, intensive outpatient, IOP. Yeah, roger that. We got that. Residential treatment, acute stabilization. So it's anywhere on the spectrum, and they do it as a free service. Now people go, free service? How do they do it for free? Well, what we do is free. We are primarily an insurance-centric model, meaning most people that call us, the vast majority of them, have some kind of either private or commercial insurance. And when a person seeks treatment, their insurance reimburses the facility. Now, of course, Acadia is a for-profit company, so we would like to place them in an Acadia facility if possible, if the clinical, appropriateness is there, if the insurance works, the financials, the geography. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this decision. We'd love to put them in an Acadia facility because we have just a vast array of things that we can address. However, what allows us to really do the job, I think, very ethically, is we don't have an obligation to send to an Acadia facility. So we use facilities outside of the network that Acadia does not own. They do not make one singular cent on it. And if that's the best fit for the client, for insurance, clinical, financials, geography, et cetera, we have no problem connecting you to a facility outside the network that we have vetted, that we know your insurance works at, and we're okay giving you this resource, and you can go. you can go to that resource.
Your
That's
dividends,
amazing.
your dividends on the back end will pay off tenfold. But your particular expertise is public safety or first responder liaison or public safety?
Public safety liaison.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Now see, for mental health, if people, usually first responders have decent insurance. Okay. So it's a win-win. First responders are in the most need of mental health, in my opinion, and they have great insurance. It's a win-win for
As they should.
both ways, because with that financing, you can get them into the proper treatment. And I know people who you've sent to facilities, and they come back such better people because they could function inside this world. So like I said, the work that you did in the police department, ultra important, great job. You did a wonderful thing. But that was like the training period for what your life's all about.
You know, but this is touching on a subject where departments don't want to hear. You know, mental health and mental wellness has been like pushed under the rug for years because nobody ever wanted. We talk about this all the time. Nobody ever wants to admit that they're having some mental health issues in law enforcement or in the fire. You're going to be labeled
Blackballed.
You're
Pariah.
not going to get that extra assignment you want.
Thought less of.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's such a great thing that you guys are doing.
That was something that I struggled with personally because I know when I pensioned out, a lot of people called me some really awful names. You know, we've heard it. Oh, you hit the lottery.
Yeah. Come live my lottery.
It's a lack of awareness.
Yeah.
And I don't get mad at folks. You know, I just understand that they're uneducated when it comes to trauma.
I don't anymore. At the time, I was too deep in the midst of it. I did get a little mad. I never lashed out. Thankfully, I never lashed out. They never got a phone call. They're just, again, I choose to associate people that are good for my own well-being. Let's put it that way. And what you're doing right now, what does it do on the back end when you send somebody to a facility and they get treatment and they call you up? Because this has just happened. I know this just happened because it happened to me. They call you up and say, "Hey, I'm back. Thank you so much." And that's all you want, right?
Man, listen, I wish I could pull my phone up and run through some text messages that I receive. It's what drives us to do this. I mean, and you know, the funny part is that you get a lot out of it when you see these outcomes. But the truth is, I mean, I tell everybody the same thing. I don't want to say a speech, but I have, you know, sort of a template in my head of my experience. And it sounds something like this. I will connect you with the best clinical resources that we can find you. I will set the table for you. But brother or sister, you have to do the work. I can bring you there, I can get you there, but you have to open your mind, you have to open your heart, you have to lean into it, you got to get after it, you got to use some of the skills that probably made you a good cop, some of the type A personality, let go of this stuff because the return on investment is like 10x.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Right? You can't go there and go through the motions. I would say you're not ready, man, if you think that you're going to do that. You're not ready. So that's and I wanted to say too, so real quick, just to kind of further clarify. So within that treatment placement specialist team of about 80 folks that are all over, we have so many subspecialties, which is super cool. I mean, we have eating disorder experts. We have another guy that works with us who just does higher education. So he only works with, you know, they call them emerging adults. We call them young adults, but in this business, it's called emerging. The 18 to 26 sort of demographic, college students. And he just works with college students, getting them into treatment, making sure they aren't charged for classes and how to matriculate, back into the fold of things. Like, does a phenomenal job. But what we do, my partner and I, who I should mention, my brother, Joe Collins, who's a retired chief of police. I've
spoken with Joe.
Joe's an awesome guy. I mean, he's my brother from another mother. We always say we're sort of half kidding, but mostly serious. We think we share a brain sometimes because we it's like we're a couple. We finish each other's sentences. We're just on the same wavelength with this stuff. So, but Joe, so Joe and I share almost identical pedigree in terms of our background. I mean, law enforcement experience, went to the NA. We were involved in SWAT, just very, very similar. And by the way, we see this sort of, this realm of mental health, addiction, trauma, exactly the same way. So Joe and I are we have the subspecialty in law enforcement and first responders. I mean, we have a combined 65 years of experience. So we've kind of seen just about
everything.
Just about. And so it's incredible. I mean, I couldn't do this job by myself. The volume's just too big, and I wouldn't be as effective by myself. I mean, it'd just be overload. That's why we brought Joe on too. He was actually working with Acadia doing some consulting stuff when I first came on, and we just clicked right away. And so I have one of my best pals as my teammate now, and we work on everything together. I talk to him, no kidding, probably 10 times a day, every day. So even on weekends. And this is the stuff we talk about.
Does Acadia have hair growth specialists?
Shut up. It's funny though. You said before, I'll set the table for you. It's like, I'll set the table, but you have to eat the food.
Well, that goes.
Right? And that's really what it comes down to, is you're going to set it up for them, but they got to take the next step.
That goes on down the line with everything. You can apply that mantra to everything. Mike just did it for my son. He opened the door for my son. It's my son's job to walk through that door. We can't push him through the door. We can't make him walk through the door. He's got to walk through on his own, and it's the same thing here.
Well, like I said, I just set the table, and he's got to eat the food now.
That's 100%.
Another analogy that I use all the time with folks is, look, you came to me and you said you wanted to get in shape, and I said, all right, cool. I got a trainer for you. I got your gym membership. Even have a person who will design your diet. It's all there. Guess what? Mike ain't getting in shape unless Mike does it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true.
You could join a gym. It's not going to get you in shape. You have to go to the gym.
Right. You got to put the effort in.
So we're coming to the end of this thing here. And I don't even know how to fashion this part of the podcast. You've seen so much, from what you do now to your police career to how you tried to make a difference, which is all you're still doing that. You're still doing the same thing that your mission that you set out for in the police department, which is to change things that you saw were broken. But you've seen a lot of suffering. And if you don't learn from your suffering, then it's really a wasted opportunity. So what do you think your suffering of all this stuff has taught you?
Education on trauma, perspective. When you understand, what trauma can and will do to somebody, their brain, how it'll drive their behavior, you start to have a different perspective. And that's why I say, like, the resilience curriculum and learning about trauma, not just the resiliency, but learning what trauma does to the brain, but also the neuroplasticity of the brain, that you could learn new stuff, right? Create new neural pathways, different ways of thinking. When you start to learn about trauma and what it does, and the self-harm patterns, I mean, all the stuff that it can create, you start to gain a different perspective on people. And that's why I think it's such an important thing for young police officers to understand what trauma does to the brain, the body, the behavior, right? Because it is not, I say this all the time, I'll qualify my statements by saying it's not an excuse for anybody to harm themselves or others, to do bad things to other humans. It's not an excuse. It's not a free pass. It's perspective. You can look at people who are doing bad things and you can say to yourself, I wonder what happened to them, right? I wonder, what drove that person into the current state that they're
What's
in.
the underlying condition?
Of course.
Yeah.
There's
absolutely.
there's always something beneath. There's always some context. I mean, the substance use issue, a lot of times is symptomatic of the trauma, unaddressed trauma, unresolved trauma. So there's just so much. I think the trauma piece has just been such an eye-opener for me. And we're so lucky. We get to work with some really bright people and doctors, and we get training and education. So I am much more educated on this than I ever was. And, it's really helped me understand people a lot more. And I'm absolutely, wholeheartedly convinced police officers need this. They need this education.
You're taking... When police officers in general, that's what I'm going to speak on because that's what I know, and I know it's broader than that, but we're going through something and we don't understand it. And that's what drives people to do the unthinkable, because you don't understand it. But through education, just like you said, now all of a sudden you have an understanding of, okay, I know this. This is why this stuff's happening. It doesn't make it easier, but what it does is make you understand it. Okay, if I understand it, And when I understood it, I know that this helps. So now you have a pathway to go. At least you have a jumping off point. And that's what you do. And I can't thank you enough for coming in here.
Listen, man, I think we probably have a lot more to talk about. I sense there's going to be a part two because I told you I'm a self-proclaimed nerd when it comes to this. I will talk about it for hours and never run out of things to say because it interests me. And you know, we have a passion for it. So,
but you were supposed to come up here with Josh, but unfortunately, you're one of these guys who says their family's more important. Like, geez.
I think it was a basketball game.
Yeah,
I can't mess the kids' basketball.
No, I'm with you on that one. But thank you so much, Bill.
Bill, you're doing great things, man.
Nice.
Keep it up. Keep it up. It's important.
I wish this could go on all night. I really do, but unfortunately, we got to wrap it up. Thanks for coming in so much. And listen, you're family now. You're always welcome in here. You have something that you want us to get out. We can be a conduit in order to get that out in the world. Because if we can do with this show a minuscule amount of the good that you're doing, we win.
Well, listen, I appreciate it. Thanks for highlighting what we're doing. I mean, again, you know, I can honestly say there's a lot of people that went into my development. I still have a lot more development to incur, but you know, I did not get here by accident. There's a lot of people helping me, a lot of good mentors. I mentioned some of them, certainly my family, and you know, and I've been given incredible opportunities by Acadia to do this work. So I do want to acknowledge, you know, that portion of it because I mean, this is like, you know, sometimes I have to pinch myself, honestly, even though it is emotional work. It's draining sometimes, right? And you know, there's ways to manage that, which I do. It's tremendous that we get to do this. It really is. I mean, you mentioned earlier, I think you said something to the effect of, and you nailed it. You said, you know, being a cop in law enforcement was tremendous, but doesn't compare to this. And you're absolutely right. I say it all the time, and that's not a shot at that.
Not at all.
Listen, I couldn't do this job if I didn't do 25 years on the job in that community, you know, Atlantic City, and see the things that I saw. It gives me credibility and credentials, so to speak, to talk about the things I talk because I was there. I saw a lot of it, either first person or through vicarious means, seeing other people suffer. So I know what it looks like. And now I've worked with Acadia for about 6 years, and I've done thousands of referrals with Joe, with my counterpart, Joe. So we have a large volume, a large reference to go from because we see these things every day. We see the fact patterns, first responders, public safety, suffering. And I can tell you 100% without any hesitation, you could take the fact pattern of what some of these folks are going through and you could place it anywhere. It could be in Seattle, it could be Texas, Florida, Maine, anywhere in between. It's eerily the same. Why? Because of the continuity of the experience. Everybody's going through the same stuff. That's what's happening. So anyway, that was a little wordy, but that's why we do this. That's what keeps us so energized. The outcomes. I know we just had one, you know, between us with a guy that you referred to me who's doing tremendous right now.
Yep. I spoke with him the other day. He's living his best life right now, and he's so grateful for the opportunity in order to get better. Yeah. But in order to wrap this up, you said earlier on you didn't know what you didn't know when you were earlier. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, and it's a Socratic theory. It's the wise man knows that he knows nothing. Just think about what we're going to learn in the future. Mm-hmm. You know a lot now, but there's more to learn.
It sure is, man.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate
Let's hope the future's not too late, though. We got to help these people while they need the help now.
Sure.
We're going to learn a lot in the future.
Yeah.
That's going to do it for this episode of The Suffering Podcast, The Suffering of Others, with our very special guest, Bill Mazur. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. There's a purpose for existing, the PFE. Police work is dangerous, but so is telling your parents that you're dropping out of college. Did you ever ask why? PCH, Personal Code of Honor. Be a man of your word. You have to lean into it, but most importantly, Billy is a man who would do anything for you. But just to prove that point, when Billy walked in this studio, he gave me this Atlantic City Police Department patch that he ripped off of his shoulder. So he didn't just give me a patch, he gave me his patch, and I'm going to hold it forever.
And you can see the white behind it, too, so you know he was deputy chief back then.
White shirt, man.
That's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast. Don't forget, you can now join our subscription channel. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Clapper, LinkedIn, all the... don't even say it. Don't even say it. Don't even say it. Follow Mike at Mike_Failace. Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. And follow the Suffering Podcast. We're going to see you on the next episode.